Um, I am so sorry about the rain, but it rained in Tokyo while I was competing, so I wanted to give you guys the full experience. Hi, this is unbelievable. First and foremost, I would like to apologize that I made the competition as stressful as I did for anybody that watched. To be clear, that was not the plan, but neither was today. So if I've learned anything during my career, it's that nothing goes to plan and you have to be ready for anything. You have to be ready to roll with the punches and, just be adaptable. When I picked up a pole for the first time, I was going to say right here because we were on the field, on football field 18 years ago. I had no idea where the sport would take me. I just knew that I loved it more than anything and that I wanted to keep doing it as much as possible. And Olmsted Falls allowed me to succeed in a way that not many other schools would have. From the support of the coaches, to the teachers, to the community, Olmsted Falls allowed sports in general, but especially girls' sports, to thrive. Pole vault was extremely new, even for women, when I started in 2004. It had only been in the Olympics since the year 2000. So needless to say, I don't think the coaches were keen on having a 12-year-old girl pole vault when it was so new and dangerous and technical. But I saw the high schoolers doing it and I knew that I needed to try it. And when I want to do something, I don't really let it go. I am very persistent. I think my family would call it annoying. And they did finally let me go over and try it. And I walked up all 70 pounds of me, or as Godfrey likes to say, all legs and smile, or teeth. And I asked Dave Godfrey, G, who was working with another girl at the time, if I could try. And he said yes. And I loved it immediately. Even after the second day, when I landed back on the runway, getting a little too excited, gripping a little too high. G helped me make it to the state meet 3 years in a row. He helped me win the state meet and set the state record, but it was at the district meet my senior year that he already brought up that he gave me a pretty incredible piece of advice that I will never forget. I was sick with strep throat the whole week before, and I had to be top 4 at this meet to advance to regionals and to have a chance at the state meet. I missed my first 2 attempts at the opening bar, which at that time I had never done before. And so I was very nervous. And he told me, and I quote, "This is just the first of many important third attempt makes in your career." And I think after last week, he owes me and I told you so. As I was looking back on my Olympic experience, this meet was the perfect representation of my year, and to be honest, my entire career. I finished 2020 with the highest jump in the world, coming into this year more confident than ever. And then I got COVID in December, as I'm sure many of us did. I was moderately sick. I had a bad headache, lost a taste and smell, and a bit shortness of breath. But I came back relatively quickly, or so I thought. The lingering effects were something that I could barely even put into words to describe. Something was just off. Physically, I was back really quickly. My numbers in the weight room were great. Training was great, but something was wrong. And the best way that I could describe it was just a brain fog. There was a disconnect between my mind and my body, and I was mentally flat. And in a pole vault, when you're running down a runway full speed, you make a split-second impulse decision to jump into the takeoff, but I couldn't see the takeoff. And it wasn't a vision problem, I just couldn't process what I was seeing quickly enough to then move my hands and jump. And the best way that I could describe it, not pole vaulting, is that I was watching an episode of Jeopardy and a question came on the screen and I could see the words, I could read the words, but I could not process the question quickly enough to answer it. Although my siblings would say I wouldn't have been able to answer it anyways. So it was the worst feeling coming off the best year of my life to feeling lost on the runway, especially in an Olympic year. I cried a lot. I debated quitting after the year because I couldn't handle coming in every day and leaving defeated, especially when earlier in my career I had conquered a mental block. I really thank my family and friends and my boyfriend for listening to me cry a lot and trying to make me feel better. I thank my coach Brad for staying as patient as he could with me while not really understanding what was wrong. It took time, but I did start to come out of that at the beginning of the outdoor season. So I started to feel more confident. Physically, I was better than ever, I was really ready to jump high. And then after one of my competitions in the airport, I went to pick up my poles from oversized baggage claim, as I normally do. And I picked up one end of the bag and it bent completely in half. They're not supposed to do that. Every single one of my poles had been snapped in half a month before the Olympic trials. I was sick. The pole company that I've been working with wasn't going to be able to get me poles in time for my next competition. So we called other companies and got sets of poles from them within days, which is amazing. They didn't owe me anything, and so the fact that they did that for me was wonderful. But with poles, you really build a trust, and so I was a little skeptical about how it might go. But my first competition on these new poles ever, I set an all-time personal best. And I never looked back. I think the poles breaking were, ironically enough, the best thing that ever happened to me, although don't tell the airline that, because I got a check from them. Because these new poles were absolutely perfect for my jump in a way that I had never felt before, but I wouldn't have made that switch had that not happened. And my coach and I joke that it was actually my dad who just stepped on them. They were just sitting there perfectly fine, and all of a sudden just snapped in half out of thin air. A little bit of divine intervention. The trials went about as perfectly as they could, and I'm so grateful for that, because making an Olympic team is the dream, other than maybe winning. It's something that can never be taken from you, and everyone, whether you follow track and field or not, understands the weight and the importance of the title Olympian. The prelims in Tokyo were a bit hectic, very reminiscent of today. The way it works is 2 pits go at once until there are only 12 or so women left. My coach sat me down beforehand and told me to be ready for anything. He himself was a 2-time Olympian, and unfortunately had no height at both of them, and wanted me to be fully prepared so that I didn't go through what he went through. I thankfully got my one and only jump in right before the rain hit. As I picked up my pole to take my jump, I saw a couple fat drops fall and just said to myself, you had better make this bar because you don't know what is about to happen. And thankfully I did, because the skies absolutely opened up. And 2 vaulters later, they stopped the competition for an hour rain delay. And about 2 hours after that, the field was decided. I didn't have to jump again, thankfully, and they took 15 of us to the final. Now, before the final, I felt incredibly confident. I truly felt like I could win. And then I started warming up. And my left quad, which is my takeoff leg that I jump off of, just would not loosen up. It was incredibly tight. It kept grabbing and cramping with every run and exercise and jump that I did, and this had never happened to me before. I've been very fortunate throughout my career not to deal with injuries unless I do something stupid, rolling my ankle. Like, I've been really lucky. So I get on the runway for our warm-ups, and it's just continuing to grab. And so now I was starting to get nervous because running full speed and jumping off of it, feeling that way, I was afraid it was just going to pull completely. So I took a lot of tricks down the runway that weren't really good jumps just to try and loosen it up. Meanwhile, my coach is in the stands trying his best not to lose his mind. I'm the type of athlete that if you yell at me, I cry. And he knows that, and he's really good at not yelling at me, but he's also emotional and has a bit... Hello? He's a bit emotional and has a little bit of a temper, so by the end of warm-ups, having not a single good jump under my belt, it was very reminiscent of the movie A League of Their Own, where Tom Hanks, at the very end, when his athlete misses the cutoff, he is trying not to yell at her and just shaking uncontrollably, smoke coming out of his ears. And I swear his face was turning a darker shade of red every time I went over to him. Partway through the warm-ups, though, I'm not kidding, I actually looked up and I said, Dad, if you could just loosen my leg up, I promise you I will take care of the rest. Just help me out a little bit here. And not long after that, it did in fact loosen up. So, thanks, Dad. So my first 2 trips down the runway when the competition started were just getting that confidence jumping off of it. So I apologize, it was just as stressful for me, I promise. Before my 3rd attempt, my thought was, you just made a lot of people wake up at 6 a.m. to watch you, and you've also promised a bar full of shots if you no-highted, which would not be nearly as fun as the bar full of shots if you win, so you had better make this. In all seriousness, my coach Brad has done a fantastic job of making my focus on the cues and what I can execute. So that was all I was thinking about coming down the runway, and if you saw me kind of talking to myself, I was just repeating my cues over and over again. And it really does help keep the nerves out of it, for the most part. Now, once I made that bar and apologized to my mom on worldwide television, it still took a couple jumps to really find my rhythm, but once I did, I knew I'd be okay. On my 2nd attempt at 490, the bar that ended up winning, as I ran down and took off the ground, I honestly thought to myself, well, shoot, you really messed that up. In pole vault, you know when you hit a good jump right off the ground. This was not a good jump. My coach afterwards told me that I was so far under on my takeoff step that I literally just got scooped up by the pole and went straight up. But the thing is, I could probably jump like that 100 more times and never make that bar. Usually, when you're too far under, you get spit out at the bar and hit it on the way up. So I'd like to think my dad maybe had his hand on my back to keep me upside down just a little bit longer. I knew when I landed that could be it, but I also knew it wasn't over until it was over. I talked with my coach about what to do for the next height and went back to tape up my next pole. The Russian girl had 1 attempt left, and I knew if anyone could clear that bar to take it back, she could. She did it in 2019 to win Worlds. But as it turned out on that day, she didn't. And in one 2-hour competition that in a lot of ways was just like any other competition, my life changed forever. I was and am Olympic champion. I need to thank several people. My mom for somehow passing on this genetic ability to pole vault. And for supporting me unconditionally. Her nickname is Saint Diane for a very good reason. For my dad for taking me to any and every opportunity. For taking me to any and every opportunity to be the absolute best that I could be, and for giving me the peace of mind that even if he wasn't physically here, I would always have him in my corner. My brother and sister for keeping me very humble, while at the same time being my biggest cheerleaders. To all of my extended family, who I feel so blessed to be close to and see on a regular basis. My friends who have cheered me on for not just this meet, but for every meet in my entire career. To every coach that I've ever worked with, and that's not just specific to pole vaulting, but especially to G for helping me build that foundation and the love of the sport. To Mayor Graydon, Jeremy Dovos of Master Printing, the Olmsted Falls Fire Department, Olmsted Falls and Township Police, Dr. Lloyd, and the Olmsted Falls High School for putting this on. This event has been spectacular. I mean, this is better than anything I could have imagined. It all started here at this school with a girl who just had a love for sport and a love of her community. So thank you, Olmsted Falls. Thank you for supporting me. Thank you for helping my mom raise me and my siblings when my dad passed away. And thank you for being here today. I'd like to end this with Bulldogs on 3. 1, 2, 3.
The evening is not over. Katie still wants the opportunity to meet and greet as many of you as possible, which is what I love about this humble young lady, right? Let's give her another round of applause.